Welcome to our deep dive Pimcore product content syndication. Now, Pimcore and Productsup are a perfect match when it comes to tackle the commerce anarchy, as we've been told by Marcel in the previous session. Now, Pimcore is the PIM system for the product data management, and Productsup can be used to onboard product data from different sources and vendors, and can be used to syndicate product data to more than 1,600 different output channels like e-commerce, marketplaces, marketing platforms, and so much more. So we are ready to dive in. I hope you're ready to dive in. And please welcome virtually connected to the Pimcore Inspire today, CPO at Pimcore once again, Christian Fasching, and Senior Solution Architect at Productsup, William Johnson.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction. And once again, hello and welcome from my side. Product information management systems are an essential part for combating the commerce anarchy, especially for managing product data, for consolidating it, and also for enriching the product data. But of course, you also need to onboard the product data to your PIM systems from many different sources, most likely, and once ready, you also need to distribute all the product data to all the different channels you have. And that's where Productsup and Pimcore perfectly fit together. Pimcore provides some great tools with the data importer and the data hub for importing and distributing the data, and these tools also can be used to connect Pimcore to Productsup in both directions. So you can connect Pimcore with the data importer to the Productsup seller and vendor onboarding for collecting the data from different sources, then manage, consolidate, enrich the data, do whatever you need to do with the Pimcore features and the Pimcore flexibility. And then, finally, you can use the Pimcore Productsup integration via the Data Hub to push back the data to Productsup and syndicate it to all the different output channels, to classic ones and also new ones like, for example, TikTok and the likes. Let's have a look how this works and start with the Productsup vendor and seller onboarding. And for that, I'd like to welcome William from Productsup again. He joined us already last year. So, hello William, please show us some insights into the vendor and seller onboarding of Productsup.
Hello Christian, thanks a lot for having me this year again at Pimcore Inspire. It's really a pleasure to be here. And as you said, we're going to look at how Productsup can help you get product data from dozens or even hundreds of providers or brands or partners into your Pimcore instance. So, let's jump right into it. Here's a list of the points we'll be seeing today. First, we'll see that it's a single interface for all use cases. So it's the same Productsup interface you already use for syndication, which creates a lot of synergies. Second, we're going to see how we can import and aggregate data from providers, even if a provider sends you more than one file or data feeds. Then we'll see how we export data directly to your Pimcore instance. Then we're going to see how we can map data very easily between what the provider sends you as a feed or a file and how we connect this out to what is expected in your Pimcore instance. And finally, we're going to see how Productsup running in the background regularly, we check that the feeds, exported feeds quality is what is expected in Pimcore. So let's jump right into it. The first part I'm going to show you is the fact that, again, it's a single interface in Productsup for all the use cases, whether that's aggregation that we're going to see today or syndication. So if I jump in the Productsup platform, here you can see I'm in the Pimcore account of Productsup. So as a reminder, Productsup is a SaaS platform. You access it through your browser. You don't have to install or maintain anything on your side. I'm in the Pimcore instance of the platform. And here, what you see are projects, which are like folders containing multiple sites. And today we're going to focus really on the vendor-seller onboarding project. If I click here, I'm inside this project and I can see multiple sites. Each one of these sites is going to onboard data from one provider, whether this provider is sending us a CSV on an FTP, an XML file, an XLX file via URL or a JSON file on an online storage. Basically, it could be anything. And we're going to onboard each one of these data for each one of these providers into a Productsup site, clean it up, and make sure it reaches your Pimcore instance in the best shape possible. Again, same interface, no coding required, simple UI, and this is all tailored for business users. Really, the big benefit of this is that it creates operational synergies. You don't need to learn a new interface or new tools or features. You can use all the existing feature set and platform that you already know to get data from your providers into your Pimcore instance. Secondly, let's see how we import and aggregate data from your providers inside a Productsup site. Today we're going to focus in this provider site, vendor 1. So if I go in this site, you will see the dashboard where we are greeted with a simple interface again telling us how many products this provider has sent, how many were exported and where they went. So again, Pimcore as an export. But here in this case, importantly, we want to see in the data sources section, this is where we can aggregate data from different providers. And as you can see, we can have multiple files. Here there's one main data source. So this provider would be sending us a CSV file on an FTP. And we can also have additional data sources. So let's say this provider is sending us country codes as a 3-letter code, but we want to have this as a 2-letter code or a number identifier. We can append an extra data source, which is going to have all these variations, and then we can map and reuse any code that we want. So this is very easily done here with additional data sources. And we can always, of course, click Add Data Source to add more main or additional data sources as we need, or as is required by what the provider sends us. Again, as you can see, no coding required. So this is how you import and aggregate data from your providers. This speeds up implementation and processes drastically. So if you need to add new providers and they send you something, on Monday, you can have it already imported and start working with it minutes after. You don't have to wait on your IT department. Next up, how do we export data to your Pimcore instance? How does Productsup actually connect to Pimcore? Again, let's jump into the platform. So how does it look in the Productsup platform? So if I just go into the Exports AB section of the site, and here you will see I have a dedicated Pimcore export, which will connect directly to your Pimcore instance that's generating the very specific flat file you expect, or having a direct API connection. And you can add more exports if needed. This is usually not the case in an aggregation use case. So we'll usually have only one Pimcore export to feed your Pimcore instance with the data from your providers. Again, no coding required, very easy to set up. So that's how you export data to Pimcore. This ensures data complies to your standards and reaches the Pimcore instance you use in the best possible way. Next up, mapping data fast and intuitively. So this is really the heavy lifting part, the big configuration step that we need to do in Productsup, getting data from what is sent by your provider to what is expected in your Pimcore format. So let's jump in the platform to see how we do this. This happens in the data flow section of a site. If I go in here, you'll see our mapping tool, which is really the heart of a Productsup site and where the magic happens. So you see 3 columns. On the left, there's an import column. These are all the attributes that are sent by your provider. In the center, you have an intermediate column where we may clean, split, improve data for all exports or pre-work it for your Productsup export. And then on the right, you have the Pimcore export as it has been prepared with the expected attributes that are expected in your Pimcore instance. And we can very simply filter through different fields and map them. So I could, for example, here filter on capacity and just by simply clicking connect fields together. And now you know that these fields from cap on import will be mapped directly to capacity on the Pimcore export. Very importantly, this mapping exercise is only done once, and then the Productsup site will run in the background and you don't need to go in there often to change things constantly. You only need to do this on the initial setup of the provider or if your provider changes the attributes that he's sending you. As you can see here, we can also support having different languages for different fields. This will just appear on the import side as multiple fields. So this is the mapping tool that we have in Productsup, the data flow section. This, very importantly, lets business users take control. As you saw, there's no need to code anything. It's a very simple drag and drop UI, and it's a one-time setup, importantly. So you don't need to go in there every day. You do it once, and then it runs in the background. So huge gain of time to onboard new providers. Last thing, and that's connected to the fact that it's a one-time setup. And you will be importing the data maybe every hour or every day or every week from your different providers. So what happens if one day the provider doesn't send you the data or sends you data with missing attributes, or the number of products that he sends you has changed dramatically? Maybe something is wrong, maybe the file was not delivered properly. So these things happen, especially if you're going to onboard hundreds of files from hundreds of providers and you need these processes to run every day. Of course, it's automated, but what happens if something goes wrong? So in Productsup, in a site, if I go to the section Monitor, here, this is where we can put monitoring alerts and check whether there is something wrong. And Productsup is going to check within a site. So in this example, we're going to check if there's any percentage of missing values in mandatory attributes. And the percentage we set is 1%. So if there's 1% or more of missing values in mandatory attributes for your Pimcore instance, Productsup will immediately stop the processing and send an email notification. And very importantly, this email notification could be to your internal IT teams, but you could also write directly to your provider to tell him something went wrong. Maybe you need to check what happened with your file or your delivery process because something did not go well. This ensures that if there is an issue, you will be first, you will not get wrong data into your Pimcore instance. So no wrong or corrupted data or missing data is getting to your Pimcore or even your consumers online. And very fast, you will be able to act upon the issue and also your provider. We can add as many error events as we want within a site or monitor multiple sites at the same time. Again, no coding required, and Productsup will check this on every run. So this is the monitoring function of Productsup. This secures data quality and alerts your teams and partners if anything goes wrong. So, quick recap of everything we just saw and how Productsup can help you get data from your providers to your Pimcore instance. Single interface again, no need to learn something new, create synergies in your team. Very easy to import data from any format or even if there are multiple files from the same provider. Very efficient and powerful Pimcore connection, whether that's API or flat file or anything that you need. As you saw, the data flow tool to map data from whatever the provider sends you to whatever is expected on your Pimcore side will really adapt. And also peace of mind thanks to the monitoring to make sure that whatever is exported from Productsup to Pimcore is exactly what you expect. That's it for me. I think we saw a lot of solid features to get data from providers to Pimcore, and now it's back to you, Christian. Let's see how it happens on your side and how you import it into Pimcore. Thanks.
Thank you very much, William. And yeah, now it's time to get the data into the Pimcore system. And for that, we just configure a new import configuration in the data hub. Let's just call it incoming. And there we specify again, of course, the data source. In this case, we now can choose Productsup as a data source, which allows Productsup to push the data directly to Pimcore. Just specify an API key for some authentication. And we also need to specify the file format, which is CSV by default, but of course can be also changed to a different file format. Once this is set up, we already can switch to the import settings. And there we quickly just upload a sample file that we have some preview here. And then we start with the import settings. And these are actually pretty similar to the ones we saw in the morning. So we start with the product class we want to import to. Then it makes sense to do some element loading strategy here. That means that the importer checks if some elements are already in the system and updates them instead of creating new data objects. So for example, we check for a specific attribute. In our case, we choose the article number from the source, compare it with the article number of our data object, and now the importer loads existing data objects with the same article number and updates them instead of creating new ones. Then we also need to specify the folder for the new elements in the element creations, and there we just use this incoming folder, for example, and the rest of the settings we just leave as they are, and then we can start with the mapping. And the mapping actually is also the same as we saw in the morning, so I don't go into details there because it's really just the same. So there you can again specify the mapping between the data source from Productsup and map it to your data model in the Pimcore. And once this is set up, you actually are already done. We just can save the configuration. We don't need any additional execution settings here because the Productsup data source is a push data source. That means Productsup pushes the data to Pimcore, and we don't need any special execution settings on Pimcore side anymore. So you just specify on Productsup side when you want to push the data to Pimcore. And then once you have pushed the data, you get it here in the incoming folder with the standard Pimcore data objects with all the data attributes, and then you can start with your product management. You can enrich the data, you can add additional classifications, you can add additional relations, media data, whatever is necessary in your use case. You also, of course, can configure workflows to support the enrichment process and do classic product data management with all the possibilities that Pimcore provides you. And once your product data is ready, it's time to export it again and push it back to Productsup. And this is again done with Data Hub. And there we already have actually some Productsup configurations here, which configure how the data should be pushed back to Productsup again. And again, with the same principle, you need to configure which data we want to export to Productsup. So we first define the schema, where we select the data object class, where we can configure the schema and define exactly what data attributes we want to export to Productsup here. We also can utilize some special extractors, some formatters, some transformers to prepare the data for the syndication within Productsup. And then we can specify a workspace, so specify which data actually should be sent to Productsup, some trigger for delivery, some endpoint where Productsup then can fetch the data from. And that's actually already what needs to be set up on Pimcore side. So now the Pimcore system is ready for distributing the data again back to Pimcore, to Productsup. And for that, now I would hand over back to William to show us how the product syndication works on Productsup side. So William, the stage is yours again.
Thank you very much, Christian. Very exciting stuff indeed. So, as you said, outbound, when Pimcore has all the data structured and ready to be syndicated out, you can present it to Productsup, as you said. And let's now go into the Productsup instance again. So, here previously we were working in this project, in this folder, vendor seller onboarding. But if I just close it, we will receive the data from Pimcore in separate projects and sites. So if I open this one, for example, you can have a site for your EMEA regions and, for example, get data from Pimcore in German in this Productsup site, in English in this separate site, and so on. So if I open also these other projects, which are for syndication, as you can see, we can have as many sites as we want, whether that's for different countries, different regions, different product categories, brands, operations, exports, that's really up to you. But Productsup will have as many sites as you need to receive data from Pimcore and syndicate it, make it ready for all the exports that you need to send it to, whether that's a Google Merchant Center, Amazon, Facebook, and so on. So for example, if we jump into the Germany syndication site in Productsup, Here we'll see again this simple dashboard, same interface as previously. We're receiving right now 171 products from Pimcore, and we're exporting 342 out to different export channels, as you can see there. And just as a reminder, so we went into this last year, but we can look again into it. If I go to data sources in this case, we'll have Pimcore as main data source, so direct API connection, as you mentioned. We could also have additional data sources if you need to get data, performance data, for example, from Google Merchant Center, or if you need to get stock and price from other separate warehouse or ERP systems. And on the export side, we will have as many export as you want, whether that's marketplaces, marketing channels, social media, and so on. So just by clicking here, Add Export, you will have access to the 2,000 plus exports that Productsup provides and be ready to syndicate data out there very quickly in a few clicks. Again, no coding required, one-time setup. So that's it for the syndication part. Was really a pleasure being with you this year again, Christian, and back to you.
Thank you very much, William. And this was already about it from our side. The key takeaway we would like you to take with you from this session is that Productsup and Pimcore are a great team to tackle the commerce anarchy. Thank you very much and see you.